Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
I guess the question that everybody is asking is, who is Marco Rubio? And, of course, you've got one kind of answer for us. We've seen that Marco Rubio changed radically after he was elected with this Gang of Eight. We saw a lot of revelations about that this weekend. The New York Times talking about how Marco Rubio was the point man. And, of course, this is something that's been known for a while. But they did a very detailed expose about how he went to Fox News, talked to Rupert Murdoch, Roger Ailes as essentially an ambassador to get Fox News to go along with him on the amnesty bill, talking to a lot of conservative talk radio hosts. Many of them are pushing back on that narrative. Nevertheless, it almost passed, and it truly is amazing that it didn't pass. It kind of a miracle that it didn't pass, considering how Fox News was sympathetic to it. So many conservative talk show hosts were sympathetic to it. Of course, we opposed it. The grassroots opposed it, and Marco Rubio has really become an anathema to anybody who was really paying attention to it. But tell us about your opinion of Marco Rubio.
Well, he's a neocon. I've been watching the Virginia returns this evening, and I know that the networks are not going to be calling. They're not calling Virginia for Trump, but if you look at the returns from Virginia, you see that the only counties where Marco Rubio is winning are the counties in Northern Virginia and in the D.C. suburbs. Look, Rubio's a neocon. The people who are voting for him in Northern Virginia are neocon Republicans. They either work for the federal government and they live in Northern Virginia, in Arlington County, Alexandria, Falls Church, Fairfax County, Loudoun County. This is the Rubio territory this evening.
Yeah.
I would note, and Fairfax County, this is where many of these neocon think tanks have their offices. So the people not only live there, they work there. We also know that the log cabin Republicans, the gay Republicans, have been working overtime to help their comrade in arms, so to speak, Marco, in this election. And again, in the Northern Virginia Republican Party is heavy with log cabin Republicans. They're either out of the closet or they're still in the closet. I know enough about Northern Virginia politics. I won't claim expertise in the rest of the state because that's, you got the Tidewater area. I notice Trump is doing very well with the military vote in Norfolk and Virginia Beach. Mm-hmm. He's doing very well with the old coal mining towns where the jobs have been largely lost in Southwest Virginia. He's outside of Northern Virginia. The only place where Rubio is doing well is college towns like Radford, where there was apparently an altercation with some protesters. Harrisonburg, which is James Madison University. But you look at the students there who are in the young Republicans, college Republicans. Again, they're neocons. Their parents live up in Northern Virginia, who are, either retired military working for the neocons, or they're neocons working for the federal government.
So what you're saying, Wayne, is that this is really, maybe even more so than Florida, this is really Marco Rubio's home state, because this is really where the GOP establishment is here. Right. The suburbs that are part of Northern Virginia, outside of D.C.
It's his home territory.
Yeah.
And look, I think Trump's going to win Virginia. I don't think they had the turnout except maybe in Loudoun County. Of course, that's where a lot of the CIA guys live out there. Mm-hmm. They're going to be for Rubio, because Rubio's campaign slogan is what? We need a new American century. Where have I heard that rhetoric?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's right out of the neocon playbook. So
that's right.
Yeah, he's doing well in the counties that can profit from his future neocon wars. And I'm not surprised, but I don't think they're getting a turnout. I think the rest of Virginia is going to offset the vote for Rubio, and I think Virginia will have to eventually, the MSNBC, which is so in the tank for Rubio this evening, is going to have to call that state for Trump. And the rest of it, you look at the sea of red, the counties that Trump is winning, and it goes from Virginia all the way down through Georgia over to Alabama, and now it looks like Trump's way ahead in Oklahoma, And I think the state to watch is going to be Texas.
Yeah.
Because if Cruz loses there, they're going to say, look, it's over. It's over, buddy. You got to get out.
Well, you know what I've been looking at on the returns from Virginia, I've seen these numbers essentially staying still, although the percentages of precincts reporting has gone up. When I first started looking at this, Wayne, it was only 11%, and the percentage breakdown between the top three candidates was essentially the same. It was 39% for Trump, 30% for Rubio, and 18% for Cruz. Now what it is with 64% reporting is 37% for Trump, 30% for Rubio, and 17% for Cruz. So it really hasn't changed as we've been watching this throughout the night. And yet here we are with 64% of them reporting, and they still don't want to call it for Trump. Pretty interesting.
Well, that's it. And again, I've been looking at those Virginia returns, and if they first of all, Northern Virginia, they're not going to get a heavy turnout because this is Democratic Party territory. These are the counties that went for Obama in both elections, 08 and 12. Mm-hmm. And so that, you know, they used to have a saying in Arlington County that the Arlington County Republican party could have a meeting at somebody's house. I actually was at one of those meetings one time, and it wasn't somebody's house. I mean, no Republican is going to win up there in those. So there's not the turnout, there's not the numbers, and you know, I wish these networks would understand that they got to see the tea leaves, read the tea leaves right, because there is no way that Rubio can win Virginia. I'm looking at these, unless there's a situation, and I ran across this return. Every one of these primaries, I find an anomaly with the returns. Yeah. Although the Trump won Georgia, I'm looking at the returns from Elbert County, which is up in the northeast corner of Georgia. And they're reporting with, now granted, one of 11 precincts reporting in, Rubio at 40.9%, Cruz at 35.9%, Kasich at 10.4%, and Carson at 7.7%. Now, the rest of the counties around there are all going for Trump. Where is Trump in these returns? He's nowhere to be found.
They don't even list him.
It's incredible. It's incredible.
And yet, across Georgia, it's like 51% for Trump, and yet he doesn't even show up in that county.
Listed. So, you know, I'd be looking at that one for a recount, because that smells of some chicanery. I saw the same thing happen in New Hampshire in their primary, and you see these kind of bellwether situations that indicates there's probably fraud going on with the voting machines.
What do you think so far of what we're seeing? We still haven't seen Virginia being called for Donald Trump with 80% of the votes, and I haven't seen the percentages really fluctuate on here. It stayed about 36, 37% all night, with Marco Rubio at 30, 31%, Ted Cruz at 17 or 18%. It's still about there, but they're not calling it for Donald Trump. Your comments on that? Why do you think they're waiting so long?
If you analyze this, let's take Virginia, the Northern Virginia, the Washington suburbs, if you will, are, of course, the home of the liberal Republicans and the establishment Republicans. The Henrico, Chesterfield area in the second ring outside of Richmond is kind of Reagan country. Very conservative. Of course, the rest of the state, other than Newport News and the Norfolk area, which is generally heavily Democratic, but also heavily military induced. What we're seeing tonight is the same trend over and over. In the places Ted Cruz
okay, we're getting a little bit of break up there.
To do well. It's Donald Trump who's romping, and Marco Rubio is getting the votes of the type moderates.
Okay, I think we're getting a little bit of break up there from Roger Stone. Let's see if we can get that connection a little bit better again. As he was pointing out, same thing that Wayne Madsen was saying, in the sense that this is really kind of Marco Rubio's home turf here, because we're looking at the suburbs of Washington, D.C. Rubio, the darling of the establishment. Perhaps that's why they haven't called it yet. Perhaps they're waiting for those votes to come in. I've seen it tighten just a little bit. It started out with Donald Trump at 39% and Marco Rubio at 30%. Now Rubio is at 31 and Trump is at 36. So he still has about a 5-point lead there, but it is starting to narrow down in that race. We'll also see that in Vermont, they still have not called that. It's only about 24% of Republicans who have voted there. They've called it for Sanders. He's massively ahead in his home state of Vermont, 87.5% for Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton at 12%. And we had 33 diehards for for O'Malley that because he was still on the ballot there. But anyway, overwhelming for Bernie Sanders in his home state of Vermont. For the Republicans, with only about 24% of them coming in, Trump is still holding on to his lead, about 35% to 28%. But let's go back to Roger Stone. We've got him back on the line now. Roger, finish what you were saying about Virginia. Go ahead.
Well, as you can see, the NSA has been handling my communications here from home. Look, what you see is this classic pattern, but there are some interesting things. Arkansas, closer than expected tonight. Donald Trump narrowly out front. Virginia appears to be competitive. Oklahoma appears to be a dogfight because Ted Cruz, to a certain extent, is draining Donald Trump, but Trump's still ahead. Now, interestingly, these are three of the states where we got complaints about irregularities. We got a lot of complaints today about people attempting to cast their vote for Trump. In some cases, the lever wouldn't move. In other cases, the vote would be registered for Rubio. We have hastily organized some lawyers and activists with some experience, some election judges to go look at these situations. We also had complaints from a number of Trump supporters in Ohio pertaining to their absentee ballot collection and their early voting efforts. So, look, the establishment is not above stealing this from Donald Trump. I have always been one who thought the computerized voting needs to be watched very carefully. I think there's a lot of evidence that Karl Rove was so confident about Ohio because he had wired the machines there against John Kerry. This is why I think he was indignant, insisting that that Romney had carried Ohio when in fact it went to Barack Obama. Carl paid, he just didn't pay last, I think.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And of course, as you pointed out, it is neck and neck in Arkansas and in Oklahoma. We have Donald Trump at 31%, 31.4% in Arkansas, with Rubio at 30.8%. And then in Oklahoma, it's Trump at 31.2% and Cruz at 32%. So it is razor thin in those two states.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, look, I do think Ted Cruz has to win something beyond Texas tonight in order to be able to plausibly move forward. I also think, in all honesty, the amazing thing about the Trump campaign is he continues to perform at this level. I guarantee you he was outspent in every one of these states. The Rubio and Cruz campaigns together spent $40 million on negative TV ads in South Carolina. They continue to spend at that rate. The dirty tricks are rife. Ted Cruz is accusing Donald Trump of being in bed with the mafia, which is laughable since he has held a New Jersey casino control operator's license, the toughest regulatory scheme in the country. You have to be squeaky clean to get a license. The whole smear of David Duke. Donald Trump disavows David Duke. Let his Twitter feed. And by the way, he already disavowed him back in August, the first time that this cretin popped his head up.
Yeah.
So this is a smear by the mainstream media.
Absolutely a smear campaign. We saw Ron Paul come out and say, why is this the #1 story all day? We had Mike Huckabee say, do you really believe that Donald Trump is racist? And of course, as part of that, Roger, when Mike Huckabee was talking to Joe Scarborough on Morning Joe, they had a back and forth, and Mike Huckabee went to the source of the issue. He knows this is something that is coming from the establishment. He said, here's the real issue. Will the GOP establishment turn this away from the voters and do whatever they want, rig this election, because that is what's really going to be destructive. So veterans like Huckabee, people like Ron Paul know that this is a red herring that's being drawn across all of this. And they understand that the real fundamental issue here is that the GOP establishment is trying to rig this. Talk to us about the delegate situation coming forward. What do you think is going to be their next play in terms of trying to push for a brokered convention?
Well, first of all, it's very early this evening, and I really am very concerned about this notion of stolen votes, voting irregularities, machines that are wired that when you vote for Donald Trump, it registers your votes for Marco Rubio.
Yeah.
And I want to see at the end of the evening whether these had an effect in the states that didn't turn out as we thought they would, or that turned out to be much closer than we expected. That said, I think the plan B for the establishment centers around trying to keep Donald Trump just short of a majority on the first ballot. So he could go to Cleveland, having run the table by and large in the primaries, although a couple look close tonight, but move forward with enough delegates, but be short of victory on the first ballot. Then you see in a number of states, the delegates are bound by law on the first ballot, but the actual delegates themselves were selected by the Republican power structure, and they are almost universally hostile to Trump. So the New York delegation will have almost no Trump people in it, although in some of the upstate districts, Carl Palladino, who is the Trump state chairman there, is fighting to get good people, solid people inserted. So that's a perfect example. If you could stall Trump on the first ballot, I'm also convinced that if Marco Rubio cannot win Florida, then the Kochs, Norman Brayman, Paul Singer, the billionaires that control him, Wayne Berman, they will give him the hook.
Welcome back to the Infowars Nightly News, live coverage of Super Tuesday. I'm David Knight with Leanne McAdoo, and we're joined by Roger Stone of StoneZone.com. And, of course, we're asking him how he believes the establishment is going to play this out. There's been a lot of rumors, Leanne, about Mitt Romney possibly entering the race. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's very interesting that he's been quiet for months, and then all of a sudden now he's the one that's putting out these nasty tweets saying, oh, something bombshell's coming, something bombshell could knock him out of the race. And I see that this is something that Roger Stone is you're speaking about, that Mitt Romney is kind of waiting in the wings, and perhaps this is something the establishment is planning to keep Trump out of the White House, is to have Mitt Romney come along. How would that work? He hasn't gone through the debates. He hasn't gone through this delegate process. How could something like that work, especially in the eyes of the American people?
Yeah, how would that work, Roger?
Well, first of all, it's not too late for Mitt Romney to file in the California primary, the New Jersey primary, the Michigan primary, a number of other late states. Half the delegates have not yet been selected. Tonight, we got to a little more than a third of the delegates. So theoretically, it is possible. Also recognize Mitt Romney has a structure in place in every state. He ran for president 3 years ago. Most of those people are still intact. The ones that weren't went for Jeb, so they're available. He also has instantaneous access to money, as much corporate money, as much as establishment money, as much old school money as you need. And all he has to do is to keep some delegates away from Trump. He doesn't even have to sweep the field. The idea, again, is to have Trump arrive in Cleveland with a large but not a majority of the delegates. You also have these super delegates, 150 of them. Now,
and of course,
changed
that's
the
about
rules so they are bound. They're bound on the first ballot, but they are not bound on the second ballot.
And we're looking at, when we talk about 150 delegates, put that in perspective, Texas has 155 delegates. So that's a number of delegates that the establishment, that the inner core of the RNC has reserved for themselves. And that is a huge number. Only Texas has more, with just slightly more, 155, and California has 172. But the RNC reserves for itself 150 delegates.
That's and they are essentially insiders. You know, they're hacks. They're Republican National Committee men and committee women. The average age is deceased. And there's no Trump support within that group, I assure you.
David, I was going to just basically add the piece that you guys aired earlier is just an in-case example, forget Donald Trump, of globalist programming. He basically rejected the Klan in 2001 himself. He said, I'm leaving the Reform Party because David Duke's in it. Then they cut his audio off, a classic tactic to confuse him. He said, who? What groups? David who? Then, and he just gave a speech earlier, just 10 minutes ago. He's up there giving one right now, where they said again, will you disavow? And he went, boom. And he laid out 6 times he's disavowed since they first did it over the weekend. But he said, you keep asking it like the viewers are stupid. And so I disavow, I disavow, I disavow, I disavow, I disavow the Klan, David Duke. I disavow, I disavow. But this is their mind control.
Yeah.
Oh, but they want him to get in. Yeah.
And so separate from Trump, the globalists are killing nationalism. They want to strangle hope. It's not that Trump's perfect or even a good guy. It doesn't matter. This is the whole power structure against him, and the Koch brothers put all their energy in the Republican Party and Fox News behind Marco Rubio, and he is imploding right now. So This is good news for the awakening. And I know we were the first to say it 6 months ago, but now it's all over the news. This is a movement. This is an insurrection. People don't buy the system.
Right.
And quite frankly, they ran this hoax pretty well that he was basically a Klan member, and that even backfired on him with black voters all over TV and stuff. You know, they go, well, you're against Trump, right? Well, no, actually, I'm sick of the race stuff. So it just shows that this is the beginning of the end for the establishment, unless they start a new, nuclear war or a huge false flag. But Donald Trump, is a wild man, sleeps 3 hours a day, whatever. I know people that know him, they say that's actually the case, not just stone. He is a, maniac alpha male. I do think he wants to be a big shot and save the country. If you really listen to what he actually says, almost all of it makes sense. A few things are red meat, like, hey, torture, and hey, break into iPhones and stuff like that. But we know the globalists are bad news. We just got to keep Donald Trump honest. But the reason they've shifted to nothing but racial politics with him is because they now know he's going to win the nomination. They now know he's going to get the delegates. And they want to either demonize him and say, well, he deserves to have it taken away, with Paul Ryan and the Republican leadership, basically coming out and demonizing him, or so they can basically try to get Hillary in on the back of, quote, racism again and claiming that he hates women. And they've been pre-programming that with Megyn Kelly and everybody else the whole time. Marco Rubio could say, he's got little hands and that means he has a little member and all this stuff. That's all okay. And, Hillary can call him names. People can call him Hitler, and foreign governments can tell us what to do. Everything's okay, but a male standing up and saying we're going to try to have sovereignty and save the country. And they go, oh, he wants protectionism. As he points out, China has such a low currency rate that it's a giant internal tariff against us. No environmental standards, slave labor. All of these are unorthodox tariffs. You put our regulations and controls in, it's impossible. And now the last jobs, literally we've lost more than 60% of our industrial base, and that's our base to operate as a sovereign nation. Now that last 40% is eroding. Within 3 years, I've seen numbers in the Wall Street Journal, we'll be down to 10%. We are absolutely being dismantled for real. That's not words. Literally. I use that word so much because, this is not hyperbole. We are literally being turned into a cashless fiat system for total control. We are being dismantled. We are being shut down right now. And the reason Donald Trump's good, whether he's a good guy or not, is he's exposing globalism as a deindustrialization tool to consolidate control and sign us on to foreign treaties that are outside of our sovereignty. We have been conquered. We have been occupied. He's now starting to talk about that in letters. He's about to start talking about that in public. And as I've said 100 times, this is game over when the people realize the full horror. And people say, well, that's scary. Well, what's good about the full horror? Admitting the crisis. If you've got a broken leg with a compound fracture, if you deny it and try to walk on it, it's going to get worse. You're going to get gangrene and die. Admitting we've got a compound fracture, going in for emergency surgery, we can be back on our feet in a month. If we don't, we're going to die. We are bleeding to death. We have a compound fracture. We have gangrene. We are in deep trouble, people. The globalists have taken every country over. They want us bankrupt. They want us poor. They want to extinguish our freedom forever. They want to nail America down. This is it. And Donald Trump is a manifestation, the organic manifestation of a death rattle. Now, if we get up off the bed, we're going to win. But if we don't, it's over. And Trump's got his own problems. Believe me, this is first wave of the awakening. If Trump doesn't deliver on every front, he's going to be out on his butt in 4 years. But here's the deal. We haven't dealt with assassination attempts, the false flags, the dirty tricks, the stuff they're going to bring out. They are in panic mode. I watched them on Fox News, CNN, MSNBC this week going, of course it's been proven he's mafia. It has mafia ties. It's in books. It's in law enforcement. It's known. It's proven, showing no facts. So we knew that was coming. They are on. They are moving. But the good news is they're out of bullets, and Donald Trump is the masthead. He's nothing but a figurehead on the end of the ship. We are the ship. We are the sails. And reality and history is the wind and the ocean we're riding on and we're sailing on. And I'm going to go ahead and eject out of here. But when you see him play this game, CNN finally had to go, well, he did disavow, but he didn't disavow their views. What a game. I disavow the Klan. I disavow David Duke. I've never supported him. I left a party in 2001 on my own volition for the media made an issue. I disavow. And they go, but you didn't disavow their views. It's like saying, are you for child molestation? You go, no, I've never been involved in it. I hate it. I disavow it. You go, he says he's against child molestation, but he won't disavow the practices. He now needs to walk through 500, paragraphs of descriptions of everything. It's like, I disavow cannibalism. I've never eaten human flesh. Well, describe how you cook humans, and describe how you roast them as long hams, and describe that you're against cannibalism. Or, have you ever beat your wife? No, I disavow it. Well, describe what it's like when you knock a woman's teeth out and break her jaw and burn her with hot coat hangers. This is their, and they have the Southern Poverty Law Center in ADL on there with these little swollen, little soft cubicle creatures going, he didn't do it properly. These people that want to control language and tell us how to think and tell us what to do and turn us all against each other and jack with us. There is a technocracy, a scientific end of humanity takeover happening on record. We better all get together right now for low taxes, sovereignty, the family, getting away from screen time, eating organic, getting the glyphosate out of the water and the food, getting our hearts right with God, and regenerating under this attack. Death is here. The devil is on the planet, folks, and everything you're seeing is a manifestation of dehumanization, and the beast system hates Donald Trump. Even though he is far from perfect, the fact that he's a man saying we should have prosperity, they want him destroyed. They want you hopeless, begging for crumbs from them, and that's what this comes down to, and these people are sick traitors. Great job with your coverage. I only got about 30 minutes left. I'm going to throw it back to you and all the fabulous listeners and, of course, all the great callers. Alex Jones signing off. I'll continue to watch right now here at my computer via the television on Roku and Boxy at home. Great job. We'll be back tomorrow, Lord willing, 11 a.m. Central for the kickoff of the main Infowars Live.
Let's go to Jakari Jackson. We'll go back to your calls. Jakari.
Hey, how you doing, guys? Some quick updates on the delegate numbers. Now, the delegates number from place to place, the site I'm using is the Huffington Post. And Mrs. Clinton is definitely in the lead with 436. Donald Trump has 139, and then the numbers only go down further from there. They're still bringing in the numbers from the various states. For example, I have Alabama pulled up right here, has Trump in the lead, as well as Mrs. Clinton. Now, when Alex was on the show just a second ago, he was referencing the statements made by Paul Ryan concerning Donald Trump and his affiliation to the Klan. And, so I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not voting for the guy. But to be fair, like if I put on a MSNBC shirt and went and robbed a liquor store, MSNBC is not responsible for the actions of me. So if David Duke decides to endorse Donald Trump, I don't think Mr. Trump is responsible for that. And more on that, I have a clip from Trump, if we can make sure the audio is pulled up. And we're going to let you guys hear what he had to say just a second ago.
Mr. Trump, you said that Major's question earlier was about working with Congress. You criticized President Obama for not working with Congress, but you dismissed the criticism from Speaker Ryan and from Senate Majority Leader McConnell, who say that you were equivocating about this issue with these hate groups.
I wasn't equivocating. Let's not ask it again. How many times do I say? Listen, who are you, by the way? Who are you with?
I'm Jared Rizzi. I'm with Sirius XM Radio.
Okay, very good. Good job. Look, I don't want to waste a lot of time. I've disavowed. Okay, I'm going to get along great with Congress, okay? Paul Ryan, I don't know him well, but I'm sure I'm going to get along great with him. And if I don't, he's going to have to pay a big price, okay? Okay.
So basically, there it is right there. He said, hey, I'm not in with David Duke. Hopefully myself and Paul Ryan, referring to himself, could get along fine. But if they don't, they'll figure something else out because, of course, he'd be president by that time anyway. So, it's another tactic. Like I said, there's a bunch of things that you can criticize the guy on. The David Duke connection, I don't think is one of them.
Jakari, that's an example of why people are rebelling against the GOP party. When you think about the fact that Mitch McConnell, leader of the Senate, and Paul Ryan, Speaker of the House, would continue to push this for day after day after day. This is as phony as the push poll that was conducted against John McCain by George W. Bush and Karl Rove back in 2000, where they said, would it affect your vote if you knew that John McCain had an illegitimate black child? Remember that? because he had adopted somebody, a dark-skinned girl from Bangladesh or something like that. And so they turned it into that to try to feed people's racism, okay? And that's what they're doing in a different way. It's a different twist, but that's precisely what they're doing. It is the same kind of dirty politics that we see from Ted Cruz. I am sick of it. The public is sick of it. People see through it. And it's just not working. I mean, we got Louis Farrakhan endorsed him as well. So does he have to disavow Louis Farrakhan? They're not calling on him to disavow Louis Farrakhan. And the reason they won't is because it shows that, as we just had a caller earlier say, if they want somebody that's across the spectrum, then they would want to go with Donald Trump because he's got people from all over the place.
Well, then he'd also have to disavow the ideology of Islam.
Let's go to Teresa in Kentucky. Teresa, go ahead.
Yes, I'm calling because I'm Democratic. Well, I thought I was. I've been listening to Infowars for the last 4 to 5 months, and they've opened my eyes to what's been going on. I don't approve of what Mitch McConnell's doing, and most of Kentucky doesn't.
That's right.
And I just wanted to say thank you all for opening my eyes and letting me see the truth, and that Donald Trump is going to be the best person for our country.
Well, see, that's interesting because it's interesting that you would say that you've been a Democrat for a long time and that you'd be a Trump supporter. I think that's going to be happening a lot. I think a lot of people are looking at Trump because he is breaking this party monopoly that people have. Is that the way you feel about it?
Yes, I do. I'm tired of the rhetoric. I listen to you all. I go in and I can listen to CNN, Fox, and they say totally the opposite of what that man says.
Yeah.
Everything that they twist everything he has to say, and they twist it, and it's not right.
It's very obvious what they're doing, especially the last couple of days. You're talking about Mitch McConnell. Isn't it embarrassing that the leader of the Senate would stoop to such transparent and petty, dirty tricks on such an important election day like this, that Mitch McConnell would be trying to hang this Ku Klux Klan moniker on Donald Trump? Is absolutely absurd, and it is beneath him. It should be beneath him. Unfortunately, it isn't, and it's not beneath Paul Ryan. And I think it's totally disgusting. I think it shows what the Republican Party is about, and it shows that there really is no difference between the leadership of the Republican Party and the leadership of the Democrat Party. There are some good people at the bottom of both parties, but at the top, it is thoroughly bought off, it's thoroughly corrupt, and that's why I think a lot of people are looking at an outsider like Donald Trump.
Right.
Well, I really appreciate you all opening my eyes. I appreciate everything that you all have come out with that I didn't see.
Well, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate that. Let's go to Habu in Madison, Wisconsin. Habu.
Good evening, and thank you for the courtesy of appearing on your earth-shattering show.
Thank you for calling.
Greetings to Leanne, David, and the Infowars team. Just 3 very quick points. One, it's fancy of Rubio to make such disparaging comments of Governor Jesse Ventura. This punk is not fit to polish Ventura's boots,
I agree, and I think he has really jumped the shark, quite literally. I mean, what he has done over the last several days is like a bad episode of Happy Days.
Yeah.
And he is looking absolutely ridiculous.
And he does this after everything. He's like...
Other comments, Habu?
Yeah. And 2 very quick ones. One is, one other good reason to have Trump in the race, and he's going to bring this upon on Hillary Clinton. He did this to Jeb Bush, and he completely excoriated G.W. Bush for the Iraq War. This country has not had a national conversation about the Iraq War and taken the people who took us to war, indicted them, let alone paying reparations to the hapless Iraqis who've been affected by it. So this guy will tear into Hillary. He did that to Jeb Bush, and that's why they probably spirited him off the stage so that this would not come up again. But it's going to come up with Hillary Clinton. And lastly, I think a way to understand this voter fraud is to look at the case of how Volkswagen was fixing its emission results. It was doing it on the fly with the software that was kind of like used in a flexible way. And that's the same way these people manipulate the black box results.
A very good analogy. I absolutely agree with you. And when you're talking about the fact that he would do well against Hillary, I agree with you with that as well. He would point out that the Empress has no clothes. And he is, just as he did with Jeb Bush. And it's very important to have a candidate who will come out and say, where are the missing 28 pages? What about the fact that you lied about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, that you created a massive war that killed not only Americans, but just a vast number of people in this country unnecessarily for your particular agenda, and you lied about this. This is a matter of historical record, and yet you see that the establishment still wants to pretend that that didn't happen. It's absolutely amazing. Even though we all know it, even though Donald Trump points it out, they still want to try to move beyond that and pretend it didn't happen. So it's very important that we have somebody that will stand up, pull back the curtain, or say that the emperor or the empress in this case doesn't have any clothes. I mean, that's a really big factor. There's just so many different issues that Donald Trump is bringing to the forefront that we really appreciate. We really appreciate your call. It's a great call, Habu. Let's go to Alfred in Florida. Alfred.
Hi, how you doing, sir?
Doing good. Go ahead.
Yes, I want to get some points here. I'm from Florida, here in Tampa. Most of the Floridians are Hispanics. You know, we have come from Cuba. We know, my family know the Rubio family, and we know who is behind all this, the Lincoln family, and this woman, I don't know her name right now, but they are behind all that. They steal money from the healthcare, and they have stuff like that in Miami.
Right.
Right now, most of the 45% of Cubans support Trump. I mean, that's something Trump have win Florida. I mean, that's something to do for choice. I mean, that's done.
Well, I grew up in Florida, and I know that most of the Cubans that I knew, I knew a lot of Cubans in Tampa. I played in a lot of bands with Cubans, and I know that for the most part, the Cuban people there were conservative. They were Republicans. And so they're a big part of the Republican Party. And I'm not surprised that they would reject Marco Rubio if they know about his background, that they would support Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump represents to a lot of people, I think, economic opportunity. We saw that even with that Muslim lady who disagreed with them on the immigration issue. She said, I want economic opportunity here in America. I'm not seeing the economic opportunity that I came here for. And so I think that's true of people, of Cubans. I think it's true when we looked at the counties and the cities that were on the border. I think a lot of people who have immigrated into this country want to have security. They want to have prosperity. And they understand we're not going to get that if we follow the policies of the Republicans and the Democrats. Your comments. Go ahead.
And then another thing. Mexico, for their part, we got some Cubans coming in because they are afraid that Obama take the law. You know, we Cubans are legal in this country, you know, like Puerto Ricans. But they are afraid that they lose that thing, and then they come in through the border, and then Mexico deport them every day. They deport 3,000 Cubans every day to Cuba, back to Cuba.
Right, totally hypocritical.
Yeah, and other things like that. We are supporting Mr. Trump here in Tampa, Florida. We are living here. We're up in Louisville, Kentucky. I came when I was 12 years old, but now I'm 22. Actually, a friend. I'm telling every Hispanic that told me, you know, some Cubans say, hey, you voting for him? Why you voting for him? I got a big poster on my car that say Trump. And they say, what are you voting for him? You see, you really dark to be to vote for him. I'll say, why I have to vote for another people that don't want to give us what we want.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Marco Rubio didn't even show up for half of the votes there. What did he do for Florida?
Well, what you said there is very important. We're Americans first. And that's what Vicente Fox, former president of Mexico, doesn't understand when he talks about his outrage at the fact that 44% of Hispanics in the GOP primary in Nevada voted for Donald Trump. He said, what's the matter with you? Okay, if you're not going to do it for your race, then do it for your host country. And it's like they don't see America as their host country. If it's their host country, they don't see themselves as Americans. Maybe they're not American citizens. If they're not American citizens, they shouldn't be voting. That's part of the issue. But people who see America as their country people who want to come here and prosper. They're getting beyond this racism. That is the technique by which they control people, especially
and you see
the Democrats.
With the media, how they're really pushing this racism thing, and it's a non-issue. And as we've been tweeting at CNN and MSNBC, and on the other side, on the Democratic side, there is actual people running for president that are in support of notable KKK members, right? But they're
Robert Byrd.
That's fine.
Robert Byrd and Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, all that. But yeah, don't talk about that. And yet you got their daughter talking about how Republicans are racist, sexist, and what was the other thing? Homophobic. There you go. So she has 75 people show up to hear her talk about it because
her buzzword.
Yeah, let's play Clinton saying that. Let's have her saying that. Go ahead. Let's run that clip. Or maybe we don't have that clip.
Surpassing eloquence and nobility. And I will remember him for many things, but
Robert
most
Byrd.
of all, for a heartfelt comment he made to me in the dark days following the attack on our country on 9/11.
Let's lynch him.
My state of New York was reeling, and we were scrambling to provide support and
She's
relief.
talking about Robert Byrd, the guy who is a high-ranking Ku Klux Klan member. They just love him.
He created
the Eternal
his own
Cyclops? Is that what he was?
I don't know what his office
exalted
was.
Cyclops of the Ku Klux Klan.
Cyclops.
He created his own chapter of the Ku Klux Klan. And we have another clip. I don't know if you go to the Twitter, you'll see it. It's there where Bill Clinton, after he died, is giving a sort of a eulogy or something. And he's talking about, there's some rumors that he was involved in the KKK, you know.
Yeah, they got that clip. Let's play that clip.
Yeah, let's let him tell.
And then we'll go to our last caller.
Now, know this. Everybody else has been canonizing Senator Byrd. I'd like to humanize him a little bit.
Canonize him. Let's go to our last caller, and then we're going to wrap things up. Richard in Arizona. Go ahead, Richard. Thank you for holding.
Yeah, thank you, David and Leanne, for a great show. I just have two things I wanted to say. One of them to everybody, and the other one to Donald Trump if he listens to your show on this episode. And the one I want to say to everybody is that how is it that we got so dumbed down that we don't realize this delegate system as well as the party system are completely irrelevant, have no redeeming qualities at all, and are just preventing the vote from being accurate from the American people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think people will start to understand that after this election, because on both sides, with Bernie Sanders supporters as well as Trump supporters, they're really paying attention and they're understanding now how the delegate system works and why it's so important.
Yeah,
so I think people will start waking up to that.
Go ahead, Richard.
It's just organized crime, and it's amazing that it's allowed to happen. The other thing I want to say to Trump, whom I greatly appreciate, and I'm just in awe of his courage and honesty and sincerity, is that no matter how great of a negotiator you are, there's two things that you have to do if you want to save the economy and bring it back. One is that all of these free trade agreements, we're being fooled by words. They need to be dumped. They're worth nothing, and they're designed from NAFTA on.
It's like a Bernie
to destroy
Sanders
the American economy, and they work really well. They're very effective, and they're totally national suicide. And the other thing that you have to do is you have to immediately get rid of the Federal Reserve and possibly indict the people responsible for it, because protectionism, which we're just trained like a Pavlov response to think that protectionism is bad. Protectionism is when you're protecting your own country, and every country needs to do that, and that's national security.
That's right. I agree with that. Great points, Richard. I absolutely agree with that. You talk about it being national suicide. I believe that Donald Trump knows that. He has been tutored by Senator Sessions since last August. Senator Sessions endorsed him. He understands that this is a sovereignty issue. This isn't just simply a bad trade deal. It is much bigger than that. Yeah, and so he understands all of that, I believe. And I think when you talk about the fact that people are going to wake up because they're involved in this, I got involved in third-party politics 25 years ago. And once you see the system, once you look at it closely, you can never forget what you see. And a lot of people are taking a close look at this system for the first time.
Right.
They're seeing the corruption. They're seeing how it is rigged. And I think it is going to be a transformational thing, no matter what happens. I think Donald Trump is going to win, but it's going to be a transformational thing no matter what happens.
Thousands of years ago, there was a basic form of chivalry. Our ancestors would hear the drums of war, giving the warriors of the tribe a chance to organize and prepare a defense. 60 years ago, when foreign air forces were approaching filled with bombs, they had drums of their own, air raid sirens. But in the 21st century, there are silent weapons for quiet war. Pathogens added to the food and water, and to the lining of plastics that destroy our vitality, turn off our hormones, and accelerate our journey towards death. I personally counter this onslaught with Anthroplex. Anthroplex is designed with known organic concentrated herbs to create the basic foundation to normal metabolic activity inside the human body. Discover why Anthroplex is turning so many heads today. It's time for us to take our bodies back into our own hands, and it starts at InfoWarsLife.com with Anthroplex.